Hello, 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 everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending on where in the part of the world that you're watching this in and when you're watching it. You are watching Get Into It live chats with Kimberly Willis, where we talk about cancer conversations, and we have our survivors here, caregivers here, we have doctors and nurses here, really to talk about this ugly disease called cancer. And I am your host, Kimberly Willis, and I bring you greetings from the United States, from the great state of Michigan, also known as the Mitten State. And I want to give you a great episode today. We have an amazing guest today, and I'm really excited to really get into it with her. But before we go into that, I just want to talk to you a little bit about what I do. I'm a wellness advocate, and I'm here to really help you with all of your advocacy needs. If it's doing things such as clothing, I have inspirational wear. If it's dealing with books, I got you too. And did you know, because we just had National Authors Day, that I'm author of 3 books. If you don't have it, guess what you need to do? You need to go to survivorscorner.net, or you need to at least follow me on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at Survivors Corner. So, enough about me. I want to talk about our next guest. She's an amazing person. Kate Bryan is an Emmy nominated producer. I'm going to repeat that again. She is an Emmy nominated producer, speaker, author, storyteller, and she's the founder of One Girl Revolution and the host of the One Girl Revolution podcast. One Girl Revolution is a multimedia platform that uses Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and a podcast to highlight the stories of everyday women and girls who are changing the world through their lives. One Girl Revolution's short documentary, The Girl Inside, was just nominated for an Emmy Award in Outstanding Achievement in Human Interest. And their new second documentary, In Tandem, is receiving great acclaim. Kate has a background in public relations and media, which was led to the start of One Girl Revolution as a way to tell the stories of women and girls that are changing the world, stories that are often ignored or marginalized. Kate holds a bachelor's degree in the liberal arts from Franciscan University and a master's degree in public affairs and PR from the Dublin Institute of Technology in Dublin, Ireland. So I would like to introduce you to our guest today, Kate Bryan.
Thank you so much for having me, Kimberly. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you here too, and to have an Emmy nominated person on the show. Like, listen, I know you're humble and you're probably not flexing, but I'm gonna brag on you. That is so dope to have that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's still so surreal. It's like when I think about when I started One Girl Revolution, I never even thought that an Emmy nomination would be possible. So it's still incredible.
Yes. And as we're getting ready to get into it, make sure that you are liking, commenting, and subscribing to all of our channels so you can see that. But then also, when you're commenting, we're going to show you on the show. We want to give you some love. So make sure you ask Kate some questions that you may have. And in fact, we already have one. Hey, Renee, how are you doing? So let's get into it. So we heard about, your biography, but tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kate Bryan. I just got married, so I'm getting used to the possibility of using my last name Milligan in these interviews. But I'm from Michigan, born and raised here, from Brighton, Michigan, and went to school in Ohio, and then went to Ireland and lived there for a couple of years. And my passion really has always been storytelling. I've always been curious why people believe what they believe or why they do what they do, and originally I thought I would get into politics, political communications. And
Mhm.
that's why I ended up going to Ireland to study there, because I just am fascinated by why people believe what they believe, why they do the things that they do. And a lot of times our stories are the things that influence why we do what we do. Even yourself, you went through your own journey, and that's what's led you to Survivor's Corner and all the great things that you're doing. And I think my story for founding One Girl Revolution, or One Girl Revolution, really stems from my own story. I'll say that
Mhm.
when I was a little girl, I have a really rare immune deficiency called Job syndrome.
Mm.
And I had terrible eczema as a little girl, itched my hair out. So a lot of times people thought that I was a chemo patient, that I was a kid going through
Wow.
cancer treatment because I had no hair, or very little of it. And my skin was completely raw. My mom would have to put me in a bathtub to soak the clothes to be able to peel them off. And I started going, I was this feisty little kid and always had opinions. And my parents would joke that I was either going to be the dictator of a small nation, um, or the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And neither of those things have happened yet. But I was this feisty little kid and went to school and had all these opinions and all these hopes and dreams. And in first grade, I went from being this feisty, passionate little kid to being very insular and not
Mm.
talking. I didn't want to raise my hand in class. I didn't want to draw attention to myself because I was getting bullied. So
Yeah.
kids would mock me every time I raised my hand. Oh, there's um, Kate with the big eyes, or there's raw face, all these different things that they would say, because my little face was all like raw and itchy because I would itch my skin. And anyways, my parents thankfully are the people that they are and realized that there was something going on. And so my mom put me in Irish dancing and all these different things to build up my confidence, to bring back that little girl, to bring back the girl inside of me. And I think that that's really the heart of One Girl Revolution. Me going through that experience and so many things in my life led me to seeing that there was such a need for women's voices and their stories to be heard in this world. Going into PR and politics and living and working in DC in PR for numerous years, I saw how often women's voices were silenced, or the media would cover women's stories in the way that they wanted to cover because they had 30 seconds to tell some story, and they wanted to quickly kind of edit it to make it the story that they thought was most interesting or that their viewers would be most intrigued by. And I just felt like there were so many missed opportunities for women's authentic stories and their voices to be told and heard. And so that's really how One Girl Revolution started. And it started as a podcast, and now it's grown into an Emmy nominated
Yes.
documentary series and so many other things going on. But that's a bit about my own journey and who I am. And so now I'm running One Girl Revolution.
That's amazing. Tell me about the experience in Ireland, because being a storyteller, you're inspired by everything. Even just looking at the trees, you're just able to just somehow be able to make a story out of it, and to where it is able to penetrate the hearts. So tell me about your experience about studying abroad, how that has influenced your storytelling.
That's a great question. And I think that it's influenced my storytelling in so many different ways because I'm a firm believer that we should take opportunities to travel and get to know different cultures and different people
Mhm.
and have different experiences. And I studied in college, I went to Austria and had studied abroad for a semester. And that kind of opened up my eyes to so many different things going on around the world and different cultures, and getting to know people from all over the world. And then that kind of opened the door to me going to Ireland. And what I'll say about Ireland is I think a lot of times, people on St. Patrick's Day, everybody wants to be Irish, right? Like everybody is Irish
Right.
on St. Patrick's Day. And I love that. My family's Irish American. We grew up going to the Gaelic League down in Detroit and Irish dancing, like I mentioned earlier. And we knew all the drinking songs, even as little kids, and we would put on shows. And but the thing about Ireland is a lot of times they're a forgotten about population. And I think that was my ancestors. So often they were marginalized or brushed aside, or, many of them came here and were treated like so many other cultures in America, where it's like Irish need not apply, or
Mhm.
Irish Catholics were treated differently. And I think that that's so important for us to know about our history, to know about our heritage. And I'm so grateful that I came from a family that really embraced our heritage, and I knew so much and know so much just about my ancestors and their journeys to America, and then their journeys while in America. And it's been cool to continue to see those our stories evolve. You know, our legacy. I know we're talking about legacy, but
Yeah.
even to know the legacy of my ancestors, I feel like in many ways I'm carrying the torch, and I have a responsibility to be a good example of
Mhm.
my family name. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. But I think that my travel abroad and studying abroad opened my eyes to marginalized people, forgotten about populations. And that really has led me to doing the Girl Inside, going into Cook County Jail in Chicago and interviewing women. Women are the fastest growing population in jail and prison. And why are we not talking about that in the world? That's a forgotten about population. Or the missing and murdered Indigenous women. I'm working on a project right now with one girl about that, a forgotten about population, something that we don't talk about. And so I think that it's so important to have these opportunities to tell stories. That's what I love so much about
Mhm.
what you're doing too. There are so many survivor stories and different types of survivors, right? People that have survived cancer or are surviving cancer, or the caregivers, like you mentioned, or doctors. You know, it's so
Mhm.
many different facets to stories and to our stories. And I think that those need to be embraced, and opportunities. We need more opportunities to tell these stories.
Absolutely. And that's amazing work that you're doing to be able to highlight these stories. I know people's lives are touched when we're able to tell these stories, and for you being so instrumental and being so intentional about bringing those stories to life. I know that I appreciate it, as well as everybody who is a part of your One Girl Revolution family.
Thank you.
Now let's um, get into more of our topic. So we're talking about fulfilling the legacy, and you talked about how your parents have been instrumental in your life, and about how they took care of you and doing different things. And really, I want to almost call this the caregiver edition, because with us talking about cancer, we have a lot of survivors, and sometimes we have some caregivers, but not all the time. And you recently had to be a caregiver for your mom. So dive a little bit and tell us about your mom, and we'll get into that story.
Yeah. So my mom, Mary Cullen Bryan, is uh, a light. She still is a beacon in this world, and her legacy lives on. It's crazy that she's been gone for almost 2 months. She passed away on September 6th. And she really was a woman before her time for so many different reasons. She grew up downtown Detroit, and one of 8 kids, and she really suffered a lot growing up. She, I think, has the typical Detroit story,
Mhm.
where her parents were struggling a lot of times, going through recessions and all these different struggles, war, and all the things that she kind of grew up surrounded by. And she never went to college, ended up getting a job working for what is now AT&T. So it was Michigan
Mhm.
Bell. And she just started learning whatever she could. She was an operator, and then quickly rose in the rankings and ended up becoming one of the first female installers, telephone installers in the state of Michigan. And so just little stories like that really inspired me growing up. And I think it inspired so many people. She was a firm believer that you could do anything if you put your mind to it. And if you had hopes and dreams, you should go and chase them. She's much of the reason why I traveled in college. She would be like,
Mhm.
I don't know how you're going to pay for it. Like, but if that's what you want to do, go for it. Going
Yeah.
to Austria and going to Ireland, and just was a taster of life. And I think that she's been such an example to me and to so many people out there. And that's just how she lived her life. And she would always say, you don't have to die to have many lives. And so she worked at AT&T, ended up getting married and pregnant with my brother. And then when I came along, the second in the family, she decided to stay home. But
Mhm.
then she went on to run a daycare out of her home for almost, I think, 10 years. And then worked in a variety of different jobs, community of mental health, And then lastly, she became a doula. I think in her 50s, late 50s, became a doula and would help women with their pregnancies and then postpartum. So helping them take care of their babies. And she just embraced each chapter of her life and lived it to the best of her ability, to the fullest. And that's been an example to me. And again, in so many different ways. And I got married in May, and she seemed pretty healthy and happy. And she always had like little health things going on, but never really thought much of it. She was 73. She was like, it's probably, getting older and, different things going on. She would get like gallbladder cramping like most people, or just little things that she would kind of write it off, and she'd take vitamins or she was going to the doctor, but nobody ever caught anything because overall she was in really good health. Mm-hmm. So I get married in May. Thankfully, she was at the wedding. And then in mid-June, things just started to take a turn where she started having all these difficulties, and she was really lethargic, and days where she couldn't get off the couch or she couldn't stand and do a load of dishes. She would pull a chair over and sit on the chair and wash dishes. And I remember she didn't kind of tell us what was going on in great detail, but she started kind of telling us, my siblings and my dad and myself, like that these things were going on. And so we started kind of piecing things together. And finally it got so bad at the end of June that we were like, you have to go to the ER. Like, you have to go to the ER. We're taking you to the ER. Pretty much had to drag her. And she's such a tough cookie. She's been through so much. She has been through so much in her life, in her childhood, in her adult life. Our family has been through so many difficult chapters. And she just has been a fighter throughout her entire life. And so I think even in that moment, she was like, I'll be fine. Like, I don't need to go. But got her to the ER. They took all her blood tests, everything, couldn't find anything. Oh, you're really healthy. All your organs look great. And then she got sent home. They thought it was maybe something with her heart. Like, she had a little heart murmur that she's had her entire life. So they were like, we're going to have you do a stress test. And kind of the breaking point was she called the next day. So the end of June, she called the next day, the Michigan Heart Association or wherever you call to make the stress test appointment. And they said, oh, we can't get you in until July 11th. And Kimberly burst into tears, and she was like, I don't think I'm going to make it to July 11th. I need to get in to do this heart, because we were at that point, everybody, including the doctors, were thinking it had something to do with her heart. And she was like, something's wrong. I need to get in sooner. So she calls us crying. And I was like, you're going back to the ER. Like, we're doing that. And in the meantime, we have a nurse practitioner that we go to just for holistic advice and different things. And so my sister took my mom to that nurse practitioner, who my mom has always really respected her opinion. And even she was like, you need to go to the ER right now. And this is what you need to say. I don't think it's your heart. I think it's all these other things. You need to tell them. And you need to tell them this, that, and the other thing. They need to do these tests. She goes back to the ER. So this is 2 days after the original ER visit. And that's when they did the CT scan that found that there was something in her liver. And so that was the beginning of July. They did a liver biopsy, and it took 8 days to get the results. But then by mid-July, she was diagnosed with cholangiocarcinoma, a rare cancer that started in the bile ducts and moved to her gallbladder and liver. And then it became stage 4 and untreatable because it had gotten to the lining of her skin. So the inside of her like stomach area. I forget what that's called, but that was mid-July. We went for a second opinion at University of Michigan just to get all the information that we possibly could get, because how can you make a decision about even end of life care? At that point it was terminal, but how can you make the best decision if you don't have all the information? And even that, my mom, I remember crawling over hot coals to get this appointment so quickly at University of Michigan, calling everybody I could possibly think of, and finally got connected to a surgeon who helped get the appointment set up. And I remember having to like prep myself to tell my mom, like, hey, you're going to go for a second opinion. Cause I knew at that point she just was done with doctors and done with she'd been
Mhm.
in the hospital for um, almost 2 weeks. And so she just was done. But she went for the second opinion. They told her at that point, mid-July, that she had 3 months or less. It was untreatable. She might be able to do like a chemo treatment. There were a couple of different options, but it wouldn't have prolonged her life. And instead, it would have just made her miserable. They were like, you're already 73, you have all this stuff going on. It might prolong your life a couple of weeks or a couple of months, but not longer than that. And so she and we ended up making the decision that she didn't want to do any of those treatments, and we respected that. I think everybody's cancer journey is different, and it's
Yeah.
their choice how they want to deal with it. And she ended up passing away. So she went into hospice at the end of July, and then hospice at home. So we were able to care for her up until her very last breath. And she passed away on September 6th,
Mm.
2022.
What a journey. I know to be able to tell this story so soon is a lot. And I just thank you for your courage and your bravery for being able to be open to talk about this. I know it's hard to hear when someone has been diagnosed with cancer, but tell me your take with not only hearing that your mother was diagnosed with cancer, but then also the prognosis.
It knocks the wind out of you. That's the only way that I can describe it. And I know that's how my mom would have described it too. It
Mhm.
just a cancer diagnosis. And I think even the people that have very treatable cancers, it's such a terrifying thing. Cancer is a terrible thing for anyone to have to go through and experience, but it just knocks the wind out of you. And so I think for us, it was sort of piecemealed together. And it was really difficult because we weren't getting straight answers from some of the doctors. And so that was really frustrating. My mom started calling my sisters and I, one of my sisters in particular, and I, her pit bulls, because we would like just ask every question we possibly could.
Mhm.
Who's the doctor? Who's the nurse? Da 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 da, and just her protectors. I remember feeling bad because I know that there are also people that maybe only have a friend or a spouse or one person that's there
Yeah.
advocating for them. And we had this like power unit of my siblings and I and my dad, and then all the spouses. We jokingly call them the in-laws and the outlaws. But
Mhm.
now there's only one outlaw left. Everybody else has gotten married. But we had this really strong unit. And I think there are days where in the early stages of cancer, where you just almost feel like a zombie walking around, like you're just
Mhm.
kind of like putting one foot in front of the other. And I know that's how my mom felt. There's anger, there's frustration, there's maybe regret for some people. I think every single person's journey with cancer is totally different. And that includes the people that are living with cancer. That includes people that have gone through cancer.
Mhm.
That includes caregivers, family members, spouses. Like everybody's journey is so different. But for us, I think we had a decision as a family, and with my mom as the center. She's always been the leader, such a strong leader of our family, the matriarch really of our immediate family, but also so much of our family. We have a big Irish Catholic family, and she's been the matriarch and knew all the stories, but of everybody's family. And we had a decision to make when she got that diagnosis. How do we walk together, stand firm, and walk through this together, however it turned out. And there was a lot of fear and uncertainty, right? Because there weren't a lot of answers. How does she go? I remember my dad asking University of Michigan, like, how does she go? Like, what is the thing that happens if we're recognizing that at some point cancer is going to take her away from us? Like, what is the thing? And even they couldn't tell us. So we were kind
Oh.
of blindly figuring out, how do we take care of her? What are signs that we should be looking for? and just doing the best that we could. And none of us have any medical background either. So that was a whole nother thing, dealing with hospice and calling family members and other people to get feedback and support. And should we be doing this, or should we be doing that? Or, should we be challenging hospice on X, Y, and Z? So, yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, it definitely is. One of the things that I had admired about you and your family, that you guys were open about everything once everything was going on. And one of the things that I had liked to see was your mom's grit in her, the fight in her. So talk a little bit about, you talked about how she's already been a tough cookie with everything she's been dealing with throughout her life, and dealing with cancer was just another another thing that she added on to that. Tell us about her walk and her fight.
Yeah, she is the strongest woman I've ever known. And she, like I shared, she had a really tough upbringing. I think she had parents that tried the best that they could. And a lot of times we're the product of how we were brought up.
Yeah.
And I think her parents came from abusive family situations in some ways, and that kind of led into her family. And so she is a survivor of abuse. She's a survivor of neglect. A
Mhm.
lot of different things happened in her early life. But what's so beautiful about my mom and my dad as well, because my dad had a similar upbringing, is they both made the decision that they weren't going to continue that behavior with
It's
their own
amazing.
kids and their own families. And so I think they are examples. My mom is a beautiful example of how we can break this cycle.
Yeah.
Um, of abuse and neglect and things. But she got married, and then, everybody thinks that, like, once you get married, all of your problems are going to be solved. And my mom would always joke that it was like, actually more problems come once you're married, because then you have more people in your fold, and then everybody else has their own things going on. And um, so my mom got married, and like I mentioned, my sister and I both have a really rare immune deficiency called Job syndrome, Job from the Old Testament. And when we were diagnosed, there were only 25 documented cases in the world, and now there are
Wow.
only 250. So, and we are two people in the same family with this rare immune deficiency, and people with this immune deficiency get sick often, usually hospitalized 8 to 10 times a year. Delia and I haven't been hospitalized since we were little kids,
Praise
which is amazing. And that is a testament to my mom, because my mom was asking questions to doctors when we were little kids, and they couldn't answer anything, and they didn't know how to treat my eczema and all the other health issues that we had going on. And so my mom, instead of just like sitting back and, letting us be hospitalized constantly and get sick constantly, she started problem solving. And she was like, okay,
God.
how can I feed my kids better food before Whole Foods, before Trader Joe's, before all this like organic push that we see in grocery stores, which is amazing now. My mom was piecemealing that stuff together. And so she even was like fighting for us and fighting with us as little kids. My older brother has autism, a type of autism,
Mm.
Asperger's. And my mom, again, was a fighter for my brother in second grade. His teacher thought he needed to be held back because he wasn't chasing little girls on the playground like the other little boys.
Mhm.
And that was a direct quote. And my mom said, no, like, why do you want to hold him back just because of that? And my mom was really feisty too. Whenever she would get um, frustrated or upset with someone, she would always have some like great one liner. And so I remember her telling the story about the teacher telling her and my dad that, and she just turned to the teacher and said, I know a lot of men that are in their 30s and 40s that don't chase women. So how long were you planning on holding him back in second grade?
Wow.
And my brother's now a professor at Clemson, like, because of my mom fighting for him and asking questions and fighting for us, like, he was able to go so incredibly far, and he just continues to excel in academia. And then my sister Moira, who I didn't mention, she has her own stuff, and my mom was a fighter for her and just really advocated for us. And then so all of that stuff is going on when we're little kids. And when I was 4 years old, my dad, on his 33rd birthday, which is also interesting, was at a conference in Wisconsin and fainted, fell. As far as I know, he fainted. He fell and hit his head on a tile floor, internal bleeding. They didn't think my dad was going to survive. So
Wow.
here my mom is, 4 little kids. My sister Delia was a baby. My brother was 5 or around that age. And so she has 4 little kids, flies out to Wisconsin, thinks my dad's not going to make it. And my mom fought for him and she challenged him to be a fighter. And
Wow.
now he's still alive today and, has little health issues because of his head injury, but she fought constantly for all of us. And she wouldn't just take anything that life dealt to her. She wouldn't just take it lying down. She was going to ask questions. She was going to look around. And again, like, this is the time before Google. She,
Mhm.
in her last few years of life, I would joke that she had her own, pretty much was running her own news corporation off of her Facebook page because she would share everything. She would
Mhm.
look things up. She'd Google things. She'd Siri things on her phone, just trying to figure out, ask questions. But a lot of the things that she was doing in her fighting for us and for herself was before Google and all of these things existed. So she really was a woman before her time, and she continued to fight up until the very end. And yeah, she's just one of the strongest women. She is the strongest woman I've ever known.
Wow. Talk about the fighting lessons that you've learned growing up, how that has translated to you being an entrepreneur.
Mm, I think it's just pretty much the same as my mom, not just taking no for an answer or not taking whatever she was told as the
Mhm.
answer. I have a curiosity. I have a curiosity about people's stories. I have a curiosity about why things are happening in the world. I have a
Mhm.
curiosity, and I think it stems from that fight. I have a curiosity about, like, what is actually going on. What are the root causes of different things? My mom got into homeopathic medicine and when we were younger to help us. And the heart of homeopathic medicine is treat the cause instead of the effect. And my
Yes.
mom lived that, where it was like, okay, this is going on. What are the reasons that this is happening? And I see that even in my life and in what I'm doing with One Girl Revolution. I know that these things, human trafficking has happened. Why is it happening? And I know every single story is different, but what are the root causes? How do we treat the cause, treat the root of that, the missing and murdered indigenous women? Why is this happening? Why is this a genocide in our culture, in our world? What do we do to solve the actual issue at hand? And so I think that my mom's curiosity, my mom's questioning, my mom's challenging different things that were told to her, that has 100% influenced me and who I am. And I haven't taken I haven't taken the normal route on anything in my life. I feel like even college, I went to I graduated from Franciscan University, but I went to a couple of different colleges too, because I was trying to figure out what I really wanted to do. And then I studied politics, thinking I'm going to be in politics in
Mhm.
Ireland. I haven't followed the easy path or like the typical path, I would say.
Mhm.
And that was my mom. She didn't just follow the typical trajectory. She was always looking for opportunities to embrace her purpose and empower other people. And I think that that's really the heart of what drives me. Is I want to embrace my purpose. I believe that every single person is here for a reason. I believe that we go through things oftentimes. I don't want to make light of cancer journeys or different things, but I believe that sometimes we go through difficulties in life so we can help other people
Absolutely.
um, and empower other people to share their stories and help them not feel alone. I think one thing, and you asked me what I felt when um, my mom got diagnosed with cancer, or what we all felt, and I think it's very isolating, right? And
Mhm.
that's so many things in life. We feel alone, and we have to remember that we're not alone in anything that we're going through. There are other people out there. Some people might think that they know what you're going through, but if they
Mhm.
haven't been, and they're doing their best, right? They're
Yeah.
doing their best to help you. And that's one thing that I've just really reflected on over the past couple of months, is some people don't know what I am going through or what I've been through, or but other people do. You and I connected over that, that it's
Mhm.
like there are people in this world that know exactly what we're going through, and we're not in this world, in this life alone.
Yeah, let's elaborate on that a little bit more. We talked about in a previous conversation about how you can feel alone and how your social environment changes a little bit. And it's funny because sometimes the people that you think that's going to be close to you sometimes isn't. And then the ones that you really don't know is. So, like I think I'm a prime example of that, like we met each other at a networking event and, we just followed each other and just went from there. And then all of a sudden I saw this story, but it made me feel like I had to reach out to you. I knew I was praying for you. I knew that I just wanted to encourage you because I know what that road feels like. So talk about what it's like to have both sides of the fence of some not being there and some coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I am just so grateful for you. And I know I've said that to you before, for your messages. And so many people have reached out. And I always appreciate too the people that don't understand and just call it for what it is. I don't understand what you're going through, but I am here for you if you need anything, or like just doing, don't
Mhm.
ask, just do. And I think that that's something that a
Yes.
couple of people have said to me, different interviews I've done for one girl recently about cancer and about different cancer stories. It's like, don't just ask people what they need, just get in there and do it. Stuff that we all need, like
Mhm.
house cleaning, make a meal. And this could be applied to anything with regards to people that have had a new baby, or somebody who's sick that we know. Like, we can all do something to help people, but don't ask, just do. Make sure that they actually need it, though. If somebody's like gluten free or they have dietary needs, don't just like buy a big cake and drop it off at their house. Like, I think
Right,
it's good to
right.
like ask questions if you need to, but overall, don't just sit around and ask. But I think it's been so interesting, and you and I have talked about this. Something that I never really anticipated, I guess, is in these moments of struggle, in these moments of need, and I've dealt with them in the past, but I've never been an adult, I guess, with something as traumatic and difficult as this. You see so clearly, like it's almost like the I don't know, you just see so clearly who your true friends are, and some friends become family, some family lets you down,
Mhm.
different friends. Sometimes people just don't know what to do or don't know what to say, or it's awkward, right? Like
Mhm.
when you see someone going through something, or someone's going through it, and we were very open, like you shared, we were very open on social media. We built a website to share the journey and the struggles and how people could help my family during this time, because everything happened so quickly.
Yeah.
And we just jumped in and we're like, okay, we want to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. And there are always going to be people that just let you down, or people that you think are going to be there. And I just
Mhm.
finally got to the point where, and I said this to one of my sisters recently, because she was reflecting on like, oh, so and so didn't even like say anything. Like, our mom died and so didn't even say anything. And I just said to her, I was like, some people are just doing the best they can. And I
Yes.
think that that's it, is we have to give people grace. It's an awkward situation. It's really awkward if you've never lost a parent. I've also had people that have lost a parent, but maybe they had years with their
Mhm.
parent. And they're like, I know what you're going through. I'm like, you actually don't. Like, I had 6 weeks with my mom. And, but not focusing on like the anger or frustration in those moments, recognizing that that person is just doing the best that they can. And they see a commonality because they've lost a parent. Um, but we have to just recognize that people are doing the best that they can, and give them grace, and give ourselves grace too. It's also okay for us to
Yes.
be frustrated about like, so I thought so and so was going to be there for me, and like
Mhm.
they never got back to me, or um it's okay how we deal with things. And even my husband said to me, in the midst of everything I was also getting so many texts and calls from different people, and people that I wasn't even anticipating getting calls from, people I hadn't heard from in forever, people sending cards, whatever. And I was stressing myself out. I'm trying to take care of my mom, and my siblings and I and my dad are like dealing with all the things, and trying to make sure that my mom is taken care of, and taking shifts to make sure that somebody's always with her, because she was a fighter, and she would like get out of even her hospital, try to get out of her hospital bed when she shouldn't be walking
Yeah.
around. And so we almost had to like babysit her at different points. And so I'm dealing with all of that. And then I'm getting bombarded by all these amazing people that are just letting me know they're praying, they're here for me if I need anything, or, trying to figure out scheduling to drop off a meal. And finally, my husband was like, you don't have to call people back. You don't. You don't have
Mhm.
to text people back. You don't have to do anything. That is not your responsibility. Your one job is to take care of your mom. Like, that's it. And so that was also like a really freeing moment to not feel
Yeah.
burdened, because I think that can also be another thing. Some people don't reach out because they don't want to burden you, right? They don't want you
Mhm.
to feel like you have to respond. But just giving ourselves grace and giving other people grace and saying, you know what, we're all doing the best we can, and that's it. That's all. That's all we can focus on.
I love that. I think also being very open about, hey, how can I best show up for you?
Hmm.
Because everybody's different. Some people like, I need to be by myself. And you could say, hey, I'm going to give you a little bit, but I'm going to be checking in on you because I don't want you spiraling down. So I think having those important, intentional conversations is very key because, again, you could customize it to that person. So it's letting you know that you're available, but then also that that person is telling you how they want to proceed in that. So you don't feel like you're burning them and things like that. We do have a few comments out there. We have one from LinkedIn that says, yes, I agree. Prepping meals is a great way to serve someone in need. Thank you for commenting. But then we also have a question from Renee. She said, what advice would you tell a woman or a man that is going through their first stage of cancer? Thanks for asking that question.
Yeah, it's hard for me. I feel, Kimberly, you might be a better person dealing with that question. But I think for me is everything is mind over matter. Or I don't know
Yes.
if everything is, but a lot of things are. And it's all like how you have to prepare for it. Is a battle. Cancer is a
Mhm.
battle for the person going through walking with cancer. It's also a battle for the family. And so I
Yes.
would say like the best armor that you can have is obviously community. So
Mhm.
stick close to your family, find your army, whatever that looks like. If you have close friends, and some people will surprise you, like I said, some
Mhm.
people will be there for you in ways that you never would have anticipated. And I 100% had that. And I'm so grateful for those people that were just there when I needed them. Um, but I think mindset is so critical and important. And so whatever you need to do there, it's okay to have these moments of one of my friends always calls it sitting in the suck. You're sitting
Mhm.
in the suck of what's going on. And so we would talk about that often with my mom. It's like, we're sitting in the suck with you. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know how to help you in this moment, but I'm sitting in the suck with you, and I'm
Yeah.
here and I'm walking with you. So I think it's okay to have those moments where you're sitting in the suck and you're feeling like Eeyore and you hate the world and you're mad and you're angry and all the things. But it's so important to pull yourself out of that. And so, however you do
Yes.
that, find your thing. If you love to mindlessly scroll on Instagram or TikTok and watch silly videos, and that's what brings you joy. I know I was sending
Do
my
it.
mom all kinds of like silly dog videos and baby videos because she always like had a heart for babies.
Mhm.
Um, and that would like bring her moments of joy. And so find your thing, or maybe it's meditating, or maybe it's going to church, or maybe it's just going and sitting outside. Maybe you don't have the strength to walk around the block, but go and sit outside for a few minutes and get some sunshine. But whatever your thing is, find ways that every single day you can change your mindset, because that's how you're going to get through it.
Yeah, no, that's good. I would have answered it honestly the same way because all the information that you're getting ready to get from all the doctors and things like that, you have to prepare yourself for that. And for those moments when you have those human moments that is okay to have, that's when your community comes in. That's when your faith comes in. All of that stuff plays together and intermingles with each other to be able to get you through those first stages with that, or especially when you keep hearing bad news after bad news or even good news. Like, you just need to keep this positive mindset. And that's one of the things I admired about your mom. Despite what the outcome she knew it was going to be, she still lived life. Sometimes that when we know we are facing an end of something, that we turn off and we don't allow ourselves to continue to live, still live, be in the present, live each day like it's your last. Don't speed up the process. You know what I'm saying? So like, even though that you can be dealing with a grim um prognosis or a grim circumstance, you can still change how you handle each minute, hour in the day. That's so key. We're getting real close, and I want to get a few more questions in. Dealing with the death of a loved one, I believe, changes you. And you talked about how both your mother and father used their past and they flipped it and turned it to a good. So, using this painful situation, how has this changed your drive for One Girl Revolution?
I feel like I have a responsibility. I feel like my mom is like watching me more than she was One Girl's biggest fan, and I've had her on the podcast, which was such a gift. I'm so glad that I had her on um, just a few months ago, and got to capture her story.
Mhm.
But she was my biggest fan. She was One Girl's biggest fan. She would share everything constantly, was telling everybody about it, would listen to all the episodes. And so now I feel even more of a responsibility. I always like wanted to know what my mom thought about different episodes. And a lot of times she would find stories and guest ideas for me to have on. And I feel like her legacy lives on through me, through my siblings, through One Girl Revolution, through my dad. And we
Mhm.
all have a responsibility to be a good example of her life and her legacy, and to share her stories, to talk about her as
Yeah.
well. One of my cousins gave me some of the best advice right after my mom got her diagnosis. And this cousin lost her dad suddenly when she was in college, and she has two little boys now. And she was like, Kate, I talk about my dad. My kids have never ever met my dad. I talk about my dad all the time. We talk about my dad all the time. He is so real to them because we talk about him, we tell stories. And so that, I wanted to share that with your audience, because that was a turning point for me. That was the best advice I've been given, because I went through these moments where I'm like, my kids are never going to get to know my mom. My this generation is going to miss out on having like this amazing granny, because she was such a light to so many kids and so many of my little cousins. And but we need to tell stories, and thankfully we're from a different generation. I know years ago it used to be like, when somebody passed away, don't talk about them, don't tell
Right.
stories to the kids. No, we need to talk about them, and their legacy lives on.
That's good. That inspired me. Like, I tell stories about both of my parents, but not all the time, because for me it's still very painful. So like, I can come on a podcast and I can talk about the journey and things like that. But when you start to tell those stories, it takes me back, because I'm a storyteller as well. It takes me back to that time, to that emotion and how I was feeling. And sometimes, like, for one, I don't like to cry. Okay, so like, cause like I told you before the show, I'm an ugly crier. So I try not to cry, and I really try not to show my kids that, but I'm learning to be a little bit more vulnerable, because I think it's powerful for your children and those close around you to see those vulnerable moments, because it's showing, hey, you have a pulse for
Mhm.
one, right? That you're not always stoic about everything, that you have human emotions, but it's a very real moment, and then that's an opportunity for them to love on you, but then also to make things come to life, because it is very important. My youngest was 1 years old. Yeah, he was one and a half, 2 years old when my mother passed away and my father passed away. So like, he really doesn't have that many memories, but we got pictures around the house and things like that to do that. So I think that is so amazing that you're doing that to keep her spirit alive. Encourage someone, especially a caregiver, who, especially someone in the community as well, that they have prayed for something and they were hoping a certain outcome,
Hmm.
and the inevitable happened, unfortunately, that they passed away. Encourage someone of how they shouldn't lose their faith, but then how they're able to move on and pick up from themselves for the bootstraps and keep going.
Yeah, I will rewind. I want to tell you this story, and it pertains to my mom's story, my own journey, and it pertains exactly to your question. My great grandfather lived in Corktown, was this amazing man, had 9 little kids. And when my grandfather was 16 years old, my great grandfather, his dad, died of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Many people would know about that. And he was alive in Detroit during the time of Father Solanus Casey. So there was this priest, super long story. Anybody can look up this story about Father Solanus, but he was this priest that failed out of school, ended up becoming the doorman at the church that he was a part of, that his community ran, which is still here in Detroit. And all these miracles started happening. So he wasn't even like allowed to be a priest in all of the facets, but he was put as a doorman. He was serving as a priest, but he just served the poorest of the poor and people that would just come to the door. And he would counsel different people and would pray over people. And every single person that he met, he would write their name down and pray for them. And during this time here, my great-grandfather was diagnosed with ALS, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, we got to get Father Solanus over there. He's got to pray over you. All these miracles are happening. And so Father Solanus actually went and visited my great-grandfather on numerous occasions and their family and prayed for a miracle, prayed over him. And the family was like hoping for this miracle and all these things, and, praying to God that my great-grandfather would be cured. And unfortunately, he passed away. And my great-grandmother would always say, but we did receive a miracle. There was a miracle. It wasn't the miracle that we thought. And, but the miracle was, here she is, this woman who didn't have a career. She was a stay-at-home mom with 9 little kids, and it gave her hope. So that was the miracle, is that she had hope and she had perseverance, and she knew she was going to be okay, even though she was left with nothing and lost the love of her life. And so when my mom was diagnosed, the first thing we were like, okay, Blessed Solanus Casey, we're going. And in the Catholic tradition, Blessed Solanus needs one more miracle to become a saint. And so we took my mom to the church in Detroit where Blessed Solanus Casey is buried, and you can go and put your intentions down, and then they have a healing mass, so you can go and be prayed over, and there's like a little relic, so it's like a piece of cloth or whatever from Blessed Solanus. And so we all go, like right after my mom's diagnosis, we go, a bunch of family members come, we're praying for this miracle. And I just remember my mom reminding us of my great-grandfather's story. And she was like, maybe a miracle happens and I'm, amazingly cured, but don't miss out on the actual miracle. And I've reflected on that so much. And I hope and pray that I see the miracle, but I believe that miracles are all around us. And sometimes it's not what we expect and it's not what we hope for, but we have a responsibility to show people how to live. But even in my mom's case, we have a responsibility to show people how to die. And I had so many people that have said to me over the past couple of months and weeks even, that my mom did that. She did that. She showed people how to live, how to embrace life, to embrace all the chapters of her life, but also how to die, how to die courageously and to fight through her cancer and to be there for her family and find healing. There were so many people that came to visit my mom that it was like they needed closure on something, or and my mom died in a place where she was just full of joy and full of life, and she had no regrets in her life. And I think it's just so beautiful. And I'll say too, her funeral, people have differing opinions about what they want to do after they pass away. Some people don't want to do anything. And the reality is, it's for the family, it's for the friends, it's not for the person who has died. And my mom saw that so clearly. But my mom, and she had been planning her funeral. This is such an Irish thing. She had been planning her funeral our entire lives. Like I remember being a little kid and my mom being like, oh, I love that song that we sang in church on Sunday. Remember that for my funeral. So when she got the diagnosis, she right away was like, sit down. We sat down one day and I was like, okay, what were all the songs you wanted? What are the readings you wanted? She had very specific songs she wanted sung, how she wanted them sung, who she wanted to sing them, who she wanted to do the rosary and all the different things, what prayer cards she wanted, how she wanted them. She planned out everything to a T. Now, Kimberly, you can't plan out what day somebody is going to pass away. So the second my mom passed away, the girls and my dad and brother and I, we were like, okay, we gotta do all the things that mama said. Like, we gotta figure this out. Okay, how did she want this? And how does this look? And her her funeral and the visitation were such a celebration of life, and everybody felt that. And I think even in death, if you know that, you know, you're terminal, I would say embrace every single day that you have, every hour you have. As a caregiver, I would say embrace every minute and hour you have with your loved one. There are difficult moments. Give yourself grace. You're
Mhm.
allowed to be mad and angry. I like got really frustrated. My birthday was like right in the midst of my mom's um, cancer journey, and she was having a really rough day, and not a single person in my family, they would all tell you this story too, so I'm not like telling any family secrets, but not a single person recognized my birthday until like 5 p.m. And I like burst into tears. I'm 38 years old. Like, why am I crying? But I was like so upset that like nobody, not even my mom recognized that it was my birthday. And so like giving ourselves grace in those moments too, like it's rough for every person
Yes.
that's going through it. And none of us are perfect, including the person going through cancer, including the caregivers. We all have our moments. And so being okay with that. But yeah, I just would say pray for the miracle. I believe in miracles. I believe they're all around us. But also pray that you see what the miracle actually is. That's what I'm praying for, because I believe that there is a miracle, or maybe numerous miracles that have come out of my mom's journey. And I'm just praying and hoping that I have my eyes open to see what that miracle is.
That's good. Make sure that you are following her at www.onegirlrevolution.com. Make sure that you are following her and on the social media, on Facebook, One Good Revo, on Instagram, as well as on Twitter. Make sure that you're doing those things. And I want to get ready to highlight um, one of her documentaries. So let's take a quick peek of one of those.
It's been a really hard road, but also like what's the most rewarding? Every fucking thing.
So listen, guys, I just gave you a little sneak peek of it. So make sure that you check it out, and make sure that you follow her again on these channels. I'll put it up one more time. And then also her website right there, onegirlrevolution.com. I really enjoyed having you here. It's been such a pleasure of having you here. And I just want to say, for those who are, this is November, so it's Lung Cancer Awareness Month. So shout out to all of you cancer survivors and thrivers that's out there. Our guest next week is going to talk about her being a chemo nurse, but then also dealing with cancer hitting close to home. Which is lung cancer as well, and her family. So don't want to miss next week. So we will see you then. And again, Kate, I love you. I hope you have an amazing day.
I love you, Kimberly. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks.